Dylan was a detective who loved his job. He had solved many cases, but this one was different. A young man named Mark was suspected of doing something very wrong in the city. Dylan's task was to find proof, but there was a problem. Mark had a sister named Grace. She was kind, gentle, and had a smile that made Dylan's heart beat fast. The more he saw her, the harder it became to remember that she was part of his case. He told himself to stay focused, but his heart had its own plan. Grace didn't know Dylan was a detective. She thought he was just a quiet man who moved into the neighborhood. She liked how he listened to her stories, how he never rushed her, and how safe she felt when he was around. Grace had no idea that Dylan was secretly gathering clues about her brother. Dylan felt torn. Each time she laughed, guilt pressed heavier on his chest. He was falling in love with her, but he was also carrying a secret that could break her. One evening, Dylan followed Mark through the dark streets. Mark met with men who whispered in corners and passed small packages. Dylan stayed in the shadows, writing down everything he saw. His mind was sharp, but his heart was heavy. How can I tell Grace the truth? He asked himself. He knew once she discovered his secret, she might never forgive him. When Dylan returned home that night, Grace was waiting for him with 2 cups of tea. She smiled and said, "You always look so tired. I hope you're not overworking yourself." Dylan almost broke down. She cared for him, and yet he was preparing to destroy the peace of her world. He took the tea, forced a smile, and whispered, "I'll be fine." But inside he was anything but fine. Days passed, and Dylan and Grace grew closer. They walked together in the park, shared meals, and talked about dreams. Grace dreamed of traveling the world with someone who truly loved her. Dylan dreamed of solving his case, but now his dreams also carried her face. He wanted to protect her from pain, but the truth was already forming a storm that would soon break. Mark, however, began to notice Dylan. He didn't like how close his sister had become to him. One night, Mark pulled Grace aside and whispered, "You don't really know who he is. Stay away from him." Grace shook her head and laughed. "Mark, you're being silly. Dylan is kind. He's the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Mark's face grew dark. He didn't argue further, but his eyes burned with suspicion. Dylan knew Mark was watching him, and the walls of his double life were closing in. It happened faster than Dylan expected. The police wanted him to bring Mark in. They said, "We have enough evidence. It's time." Dylan's heart sank. He knew that arresting Mark meant breaking Grace's heart. But if he didn't do it, more innocent people could get hurt by Mark's actions. That night, Dylan walked to Grace's house. She greeted him with her usual warmth, but he couldn't even look her in the eyes. "Grace," he whispered, "I need to tell you something." She tilted her head. "What is it?" Dylan's hands shook. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm a detective. And I've been investigating Mark." Grace froze. Her face lost its light. "What did you just say?" she asked. Dylan tried to reach for her, but she stepped back, tears filling her eyes. "You used me," she said in a broken voice. Dylan wanted to explain, but her pain was too deep to hear him. The next morning, police surrounded Mark's place. Dylan was there, but he felt like he was walking with chains on his feet. Grace stood outside, watching her brother being taken away in handcuffs. Her eyes met Dylan's, but there was no warmth in them, only betrayal. Dylan's chest ached like never before. He had done his duty, but he had lost the only woman he truly loved. Grace turned away from him, her tears falling. Dylan whispered her name, but she didn't stop. For her, he was no longer the man she laughed with in the park. He was the man who had broken her trust. Dylan walked away slowly, each step heavier than the last. He had solved his case, but his heart was empty. Dylan sat alone in his room that night, staring at the city lights. He thought about Grace, about the way her smile once lit up his days. He thought about the choice he had made, the choice between duty and love. He chose duty, but love slipped through his fingers. Grace never came back, and Dylan never knocked on her door again. Sometimes in the silence of the night, Dylan whispered her name. But the wind carried it away, leaving him with nothing but memories. He knew he would spend his life solving many cases, but there would always be one mystery he could never fix: the broken heart of Grace.